All right, let's get right into it. We all make mistakes, right? But here's the big question. When does an honest mistake actually protect you in the eyes of the law? It's a really interesting thought, and it gets to the absolute core of how our legal system figures out who's criminally responsible and who isn't. So just imagine this for a second. You see something that looks absolutely horrible. You're pretty sure you just witnessed a murder. You decide to be a hero, you jump in, tackle the person, and make a citizen's arrest. But then, the whole story comes out. The person you tackled was actually defending themselves from an attack. So the question is, are you now in trouble for assault or wrongful confinement? It's a heck of a dilemma. Well, the answer to that question, and a whole lot of others just like it, really boils down to one single critical detail. See, the law doesn't just ask if you made a mistake. It asks something way more specific. And that is, what exactly were you mistaken about? Were you wrong about the facts of the situation, or were you wrong about what the law actually says? Believe me, that one little distinction changes everything. And this is where we get to the fundamental split in how the law treats our mistakes. It's the mistake of fact versus the mistake of law. They might sound kind of similar, but legally speaking, they are on totally different planets. So let's break this down. A mistake of fact is when you just misunderstand the situation itself. You thought the person you tackled was a murderer. A mistake of law, on the other hand, is when you misunderstand the rules. You just didn't know that doing something was against the law. One of these can be a defense, but the other one? Yeah, not so much. Okay, so let's talk about the one that can get you off the hook. A genuine mistake of fact, one that you make in good faith, can be a really powerful defense. In India, this is laid out in the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, or BNS. But you have to meet some very specific conditions. For this to actually work, the law is super specific. First, it has to be a mistake about the facts, not the law. Simple enough. You also have to have acted in good faith. And here's the really crucial part. You had to believe you were either bound by the law to do what you did, or at the very least, justified by the law in doing it. Here's a perfect example of being bound by law. Say a police officer has a warrant to arrest someone. Let's call them person Y. The officer does their homework, but makes an honest mistake and arrests person Z, truly believing it's the right person. In that case, the officer is protected. Why? Because their mistake was about a fact, the person's identity, not about the law, and they were acting under a legal duty. And now let's bring this right back to our opening scenario. You're the person who sees what looks like a murder. You are legally justified in performing a citizen's arrest. Because you acted in good faith based on a mistake of fact, you just misunderstood what was happening, you haven't committed an offense, even though you got the situation completely wrong. So a mistake of fact can be like a shield. But what happens when the mistake you make is about the law itself? Well, this is where the legal system draws a very, very firm line in the sand. It all comes down to one of the oldest sayings in law. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. It's a huge, foundational principle that pretty much our entire legal system is built on. And the BNS makes this crystal clear. The same sections that give you a pass for a mistake of fact specifically say that this defense does not apply to a mistake of law. The whole idea is that as a citizen, you're expected to know the laws of the land. Now, there is one really important little catch here. For you to be responsible for knowing a law, that law has to be, available to be known. If some new rule is passed, but it's never published or made public, making it literally impossible for you to find out about it, then arguing you are ignorant might actually work. A law has to be knowable to be enforceable. So why? Why does the law forgive one kind of mistake but not the other? Well, it all comes down to one of the biggest concepts in criminal law, intent. So you can kind of think of it like the law has this simple checklist. When someone says, oops, I made a mistake, the system asks, first, was it an honest mistake? Second, was it about the facts on the ground or the rules in the book? And third, if it was about the facts, was the person acting with good intentions? That's really the whole logic right there. And this gets to the heart of it. The whole point is to separate a guilty mind from an innocent one. Someone who misunderstands the facts and acts in good faith, like our citizen making an arrest, doesn't have criminal intent. But someone who just says, I didn't know that was illegal, they don't get the same break. The system is built to punish people who mean to do wrong. Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. The law protects honest factual mistakes, we get that. But today's world is incredibly complex, right? There are thousands upon thousands of laws and regulations. So, is it always fair to assume that every single person knows every single rule? It's a question that really challenges a legal idea that's been around for centuries, and it makes you wonder what justice really looks like in our modern world.